Welcome to the Life Turkey podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Life Junkies podcast, episode 22. This is our Clash of Champions review. Now, this one's getting up a bit late. There's been a few issues getting it up. It's just me, sort of. Chris has recorded a few bits and bobs. He couldn't make it to record with me because he was going out to see Frank Skinner. And I've had other such issues in trying to get it out. So, this is my little intro bit. Chris hasn't recorded an intro, so he's recorded 4 segments, one talking about the pre-show, then starting about the main card. So what I'll do is I'll split the card down where he's split it in between his first part of the main show and the second part of the main show. Have a little break interlude there, and we'll carry on. There's a few things though before we get started I want to talk about. One of them is I realised on Monday, because of course being in the UK I can't watch the pay-per-views live, so I watch them Monday evenings, sometimes Tuesday evenings is a particularly long one. I managed to get through this one in one night. But you sit down, all day when you used to get pay-per-views even 10 years ago, you get this sort of sense of excitement. Oh, we're going to get this pay-per-view. Oh, we're looking forward to it. WrestleMania used to be this massive thing. And that's all gone now. I had zero excitement for watching this at all. And you think this is a once in a month spectacle. They spend a whole month building up to this. And you go, it's just not got it for me, really. So, and this is Mike's moaning again, but this is symptomatic of the issues that WWE have in the moment. I every now and then I elaborate bits and bobs as I think of more things and more issues, and long-term listeners will know that I don't watch Raw and SmackDown anymore. I might catch up with, there's a show by What Culture Pro Wrestling. They do ups and downs, so they do ups and downs for pay-per-views, they do ups and downs for Raw and SmackDown, they do even that. And while I love that show, and Simon Miller, who presents it, is brilliant. He's one of my favourite pro wrestling commentators. He's not a commentator really. One of my favourite pro wrestling YouTubers, I guess, is the best way to say it. But he does an amazing job hosting it. But it's when the material given isn't great, and the material WWE are giving out isn't great. And every now and then you get something that's really special. Like for me, Kofi winning the title at WrestleMania was really special. But then what have they done with that? Have they grown it? No, not really. And they've let it go to waste. And while I'm happy that he's had the title for so long, the material they've given him is awful. And it leads to him looking worse than he is. And then you get guys like Chris who get a chance. And like Kofi is never a wrestler that Chris is going to back. It's not his style. We all know he goes for his Lesnar's and his big, mean, miserable Randy Ortons and everything else. But so with Kofi being the whole power positive thing, it's not. But it's for the general, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help Chris liking Kofi that Kofi is being booked so poorly. It doesn't help the general public that might be on the fence about Kofi to like Kofi more because he's being booked so poorly. But and my argument always is with stuff like this is, if Kofi loses the title belt, then what next? If he loses to Randy Orton tonight, then instead of Kofi being booked poorly for the next month, it's just going to be Randy Orton booked poorly for the next month, and it's just someone you prefer, and that's what it's boiled down to. It's just about having someone you prefer in the spotlight. And because the booking and the writing isn't going to be there, you can get nearly anyone over if you want to, if you book them properly, if you write a proper storyline for them that makes sense. Nearly anyone over, but they don't. And it's getting worse. I really do believe it's getting worse. And what you find you're getting your booking for Vince McMahon. Everyone says this. They only book for one person. They book for Vince McMahon, but they don't. They mainly book for Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon gets what Vince McMahon wants. But what they do is they just throw in these little bits of fan service as well, which actually makes it worse because the fan service is just thrown in there. Oh, you wanted this person to win, so they're suddenly going to win the title. And there's no logical building up to it, really. And the fans will complain about X, Y visible issue. Why isn't X being pushed, or why is Y losing? Because that is the easiest issue to complain about. But the underlying issue is that the writing is poor, illogical. And I moan about this every time. I moan about this every time we come up to TLC or Hell in a Cell, that what these pay-per-views are doing is stopping you from logically building up to one of these matches, and they just chuck it in. And it's really lazy. I mean, people argue that something is lazy for a lot of reasons. Lazy journalism is a big one, when it isn't actually lazy. It might be just poorly written, or just something you disagree with. But with WWE, it does seem like the easiest way forward. Oh, we're going to make another world title belt. Oh, just make the current one red. Which, at least with the women's titles and the tag team titles, it makes sense, because they are red and blue versions of each other for the brand. And okay, I think it is really lazy, and I think you can make a title will not pop and a title will not stand out if it has another different coloured version of itself out there, because you'll always link it. And while I don't mind them doing it so much for tag team titles, because that's an undercard title and you get it, or this is the Raw title and this is a SmackDown title, and fine, they're not. But you want your world titles to really pop, and that's where the women's world titles are really damaged, because they don't pop, because they are just carbon copies of each other. And that's why the Universal title will always be lesser than the WWE world title. And I do think Universal title is a silly name, but it's not awful. But it's if you give me a really poorly designed Universal title belt, I would have gone, alright, well, they tried to do something different, that's fair. But what they did is they gave you a red WWE title belt, and therefore that means the Universal title will always be lesser, and it'll always be stuck to Raw, because you couldn't have that on SmackDown as the SmackDowns. And again, I've made videos saying that they should get rid of the brand split, but all the reports going for at the moment are that they're going to reinforce it, and they're going to take away the wildcard rule. They're going to do a new draft, and so you were going to go back to that mid to late 2000s era of having two completely different brands. If you're going to do that, if you're going to do that properly, it's fine. I've got no issue with that. However, there's a big however coming. Raw is then going to have a lesser title, because the Universal title will never ever be the main title in WWE. Not in the same way that for a large part of the time, the world title, the big gold belt, was the bigger belt, because the WWE title was seen as plaything, and every now and then Orton or Edge or Triple H should have a little play with it. But if you wanted the interesting wrestling, if you wanted to where the really interesting, entertaining wrestlers were winning it, that was a big gold belt on SmackDown. But yeah, that's me. That's my moan, and I'm not excited. There's another moan coming up on this intro. It is Baron Corbin. I wanted to swear. I try not to swear, because I don't really want to make it explicit. Because maybe one day someone will go, "Oh, I like it. This is quite good, isn't it?" And then we'll get some sort of fan base, and I don't really want to. Yeah, but anyway, Baron Corbin. He is. I feel like I've been talking about this for the past 4 weeks now. This is the 4th week of talking about it, and the whole thing's just got worse and worse. And I think seeing Baron Corbin win it, we realised why he took the King of the Ring off of the pay-per-view, because they realised that the fans would not be interested in Baron Corbin. I don't know what sort of reaction he got on Raw. Again, I don't watch it, but I can't imagine it was positive. And it's for me, it's go home. And I'm pretty sure Chris said last recording that he quite liked Baron Corbin. I might be doing that wrong. If I'm wrong, Chris, I apologise for doing you a disservice. Although Corbin would be right up his street, it's just the kind of guy he goes for. But this is the issue. They've pushed Corbin. He's had his world title shots. The fans didn't like him, and the fans didn't like him in a "oh, you're a heel" way. The fans didn't like him in a "go home and eat" way. They had a real chance to push someone brilliant, someone really good, exciting. Chad Gable is entertaining on the mic. He can do serious, he can do comedy. He's brilliant in the ring. He really is brilliant, and he's that exact kind of technical wrestler that they are desperate for. They have no one that fits in that mould, and they completely forget about it and ignore it. And they've always been fairly sparse in it, but they've tended to have Kurt Angle was huge, and he was that technical style wrestler. They tend to have William Regal years ago. They had Shelton Benjamin for a bit in the 2000s, but they haven't it's a real shame, and he could have won that, and he could have shot himself up past the mid card and started to cement himself. But no, give it to Corbin. And that's the real issue. They're not reading the fans' reactions properly. They pretend that they're getting what they want to get from it, and it's not. Quite simply, it's not what's happening. The fans don't boo Corbin because he's a heel, and I guess I'm saying this again to reiterate because it's an important part. That is go home heat. He's not interesting as a character. He's not decent on the mic. He's not even particularly good in the ring. All he is a decent finisher and a signature move. That's it. Right, so that's been my grumpy, miserable intro. So I'm going to take a quick break, and the next voice you hear will be Chris's as he intros for the pre-show.
This is a Life Junkie podcast.
Hi, pal. Hope you're well. Sorry I'm not there. Yeah, my birthday this weekend. Somebody bought some tickets to see a comedian, Frank Skinner, tonight. When we spoke last week and did the recording, I completely forgot all about it. So yeah, we're pre-recording, and then you get to mock me live, I suppose, as is. So yeah, I'll crack on. We had the show, Clash of Champions pre-show first, obviously. 2 matches on it. One we always knows there, and the second was a bit of a surprise to me, but I'll start with the opener, and that was the Cruiserweight Championship. Drew Gulak, Humberto Carrillo, and Lince Dorado. I thought the latter was a bit of a passenger in the match, if I'm being honest. It was a decent match, decent triple threat. Gulak retained in the end. I thought Carrillo was impressive. I think it's quite plain to see where this feud goes from now. Probably see Dorado drop away from this picture, and Carrillo, Gulak will probably. I would have thought that the next pay-per-view, these two will be a one-on-one on the undercard again. But yeah, I thought Carrillo was slightly impressive, really. He was my pick, unfortunately, and Gulak yours, so the evening didn't start well for me. But yeah, it was all right. Following that, we had a surprising match for me. I didn't think we'd see AJ Styles on an undercard. I can't remember if he's ever been on a pre-show match before. But he went one-on-one with Cedric Alexander in not a very long match either, time-wise. I thought they were going to give Cedric the bit of a squash match, quick win, how it started, when he hit AJ early on. But he kicked out, and then AJ kind of stepped up to the plate, won the match, came through, retained. It's really hard to see now what they're going to do with AJ. He's still one of the best performers in the WWE, but at his age, 43, 44, the main title pictures are looking pretty busy. He's kind of stuck where he is for a while. It kind of needs a long-term opponent, like a real storyline, like the one he had with Samoa Joe last year. Somebody who's good on the mic, like AJ is, and kind of run for a few months. But we'll see what they decide to do.
So let's start with a Cruiserweight title match. I agree with what Chris said there. Lince Dorado seemed a bit superfluous to the match. It was very much Humberto Carrillo and Drew Gulak, and it felt like this was Humberto Carrillo's coming out party to us. So they were saying that this guy's pretty good. Pay attention to this guy, and he's going to be the next champion. And that, to me, and I wouldn't be surprised again, like Chris said, if they did another Cruiserweight title match with just Carrillo and Gulak, maybe more than one, and it ends up with Carrillo taking the title and Gulak maybe moving on to a main card again. It seems that 205 Live does seem to be a different version of NXT. If the guys that haven't quite matured enough yet to go onto main card, but they need to make space for someone else to come up to NXT, the smaller guys, they put them on 205 Live. These matches are always a nice change of pace for me. This one was the flippiest I've probably seen in a while from a Cruiserweight title match. But Drew Gulak is still the best thing on 205 Live, so easy. US title match, yes, it was odd being on the pre-show. I like the start with Alistair making the most of his small chance. He's psychology-wise, that would be the right move. This is your big chance to win first chance to win a title on the main show. You're going to go straight at it. Then you start the club beatdown. Now I didn't expect Cedric Alexander to win, but I did expect more of a match. What we're hearing now is apparently Vince McMahon wants to squash Cedric. He wanted to make sure he squashed him on this pay-per-view and on Raw the next night, which seems odd. I don't know what the plan there is, especially as apparently Paul Heyman is a fan of him. So whether this is the first vestiges of a power play coming in where Vince can't quite let go and give Paul Heyman the reins, maybe he's trying to remind him who's boss by taking out someone he's a fan of. I don't know, or it might be an MVP style thing. This is the last time they were worried about people leaving. They took MVP, who they were pushing it to be a star, and who I was a big fan of, and put him on. It was pretty much a year-long losing streak he was on, and it was really odd because it was a time with him and Mr. Kennedy, and I thought these two were going to be the next big stars, and then Kennedy, of course, got released and never quite made it, and MVP, similar thing. So it's why you suddenly start to take someone down. And by the way, the MVP thing was apparently to test how loyal he was to the company, which if you're putting me, if I'm starting to be a new star and you're then suddenly putting me on a losing streak, I wouldn't be too loyal. Just putting that out there. But back to Alexander. My notes are an absolute mess on this match. It's quite hard to judge a 12-5 light wrestler when he's on that brand because he's up against other similar wrestlers, and you're like, well, you can do that, and of course you're going to be able to do that. Are you going to be able to do it in a cold, rainy night in Stoke? Are you going to be able to wrestle an intelligent match against bigger opponents where you can't do as much as you can against the smaller guys, and you've got to think outside the box a little bit? And I think he did it real right. And yes, AJ is not a massive, and AJ is not bigger than him. They're fairly similar in stature, but AJ is a main wrestler roster. He is a star. He's a legitimate star, and Alexander looked just as good up against him. He carries himself well. His moves look crisp. He looked to me like he belonged, and what will happen in the future, I don't know. In regards to AJ and the club, Chris mentioned whether they go with AJ. I think you use the club to bring someone new in. AJ would have another title reign in him if they wanted to go in that direction. Give him this US title for a bit, then maybe let him move up. And Evolution style, he brings in someone younger. Maybe he brings in Alexander under his wing or something as part of the club. Maybe not. But you've got to remember that AJ doesn't necessarily need to lead the club. When Finn Balor comes back, I expect him to come in and take the leadership role. He is one of the founding members of the club. He was the first leader of the club. And AJ could play a older statesman role, just having good exhibition matches, leaving Finn to be the leader and to push it forward and to be the world title challenger. So you don't necessarily need. You shouldn't judge the club by AJ standards, but the club will be AJ's vehicle to keep himself going, if you know what I mean. And if he's part of a club, he doesn't need to wrestle as often, which means he can save his body. But he's still a remarkably in shape man for 44. I say that as a fairly out of shape 30-year-old. But no, we both went for AJ Styles in it. So at this point in the night, 2-1 to me. Just saying. Over to you, Chris.
Okay, section 2, start of the main show. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so the main show starts, and I think it opened as expected with the Raw Tag Team title match. You kind of predicted that this would be the opening match, given that the Strowman and Rollins were facing each other later on. I did think they would drop the titles, but I wasn't sure how it would happen. Whether or not Braun would do a bit of a heel turn on Rollins and walk out, or hit him, or do something. But that didn't happen. Instead, it was a bit of a mistake. It barged into him. Robert Roode lands his glorious DDT, and we've got new tag team champs. Ziggler and Roode move on as the champions now, and they've kind of got a clean slate in front of them. So maybe we'll see a Viking Raiders or a Heavy Machinery or maybe the OC, but somebody's now going to get a tag team shot. These guys could possibly run with it for a while. I mean, they didn't seem like a tag team just 2 weeks ago, so a bit of a quick rise to glory. But we don't know. Who knows? It might work. It might not. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, on the other side, there was no real conflict between the two guys leading into the match later on in the night. It was decent match, and we'll go into later on. Those two moved on for the Universal title match. But yeah, new champions first up. Then we had the Women's SmackDown title. Charlotte loses in Charlotte. and Vince does what you say he loves to do and not let the hometown talent get the win. It wasn't really a match, really, given it wasn't time-wise, wasn't very long. Flair was dominant, as I always think she should be, because she's head and shoulders above everybody else in the women's division. Bayley removing the buckle, kind of stepping closer and closer to her being a heel. As each week passes, there's a little thing here, a little thing there, and it's actually making her a more interesting character. I mean, I'm still not a fan of her, but I'd expect this now maybe to be a rematch come Hell in a Cell. They've obviously got a storyline here with Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Bayley. It's whether or not who they see as the two champions, I think, and I'm sure this is all going to come out at Hell in a Cell, but I'm guessing at Hell in a Cell we'll see rematches of the Raw title match and a rematch of this. So yeah, Bayley wins quickly. Charlotte looked peed off, is the PG thing to say. But yeah, the story rumbles on, and we'll see what happens. Then we had the SmackDown tag titles. Surprising Revival win. I was kind of... The match was alright, it was going alright, about 10 minutes in. I was kind of waiting for a New Day rally to win this one, but after a decent match, the Revival scored the titles. And not... I mean, they did do it cleanly, but like, obviously they did their... I'm gonna get the name of their move wrong. It might be the Shatter Machine. It might not be the Shatter Machine. But then obviously they decided to take it out a bit more on the New Day and still get the win. So yeah, it was impressive. Now we've got the Revival and Rude Ziggler, two heel tag team champions. I don't know. The division seems to be struggling. Everyone, including myself, got tired of the Usos, New Day, Revival matches. Pay-per-view after pay-per-view, SmackDown, Raw, they're on constantly either in just clean matches or triple threat matches. But now you can probably see why it was such a heavy used schedule by WWE, given the weakness in the rest of the division. Maybe Viking Raiders, like I said earlier, Heavy Machinery, can build a storyline and make a run to the title. I noticed this week on TV that AOP are back, and I thought they cut a really nice promo. Speaking in their native tongue with subtitles, made it a bit more, I don't know, a bit more threatening maybe to the rest of the division. Maybe they could be the shot in the arm it needs. But yeah, we got two new tag team champions on the night, so yeah, a bit of a surprise to me. Then we had the women's tag team titles, and the one word I've written down for this match is yawn. The only good thing in the match I thought was the 24/7 running, but I don't know. I'm saying the men's tag team division's flagging a bit, but compared to the women's, it's flying. Because there's just nothing here. Doesn't seem any interest in the arena. There's no interest from me. I mean, the wrestlers don't look that interested in it, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do to give it a boost, but something definitely needs to happen.
Right, so first up, as we expected, it was the Raw Tag Team titles, Rude and Ziggler versus Rollins and Strowman. Both me and Chris went for Rude and Ziggler winning. It was fairly basic by the numbers match, nothing too interesting. Again, Strowman cost Rollins to build up tension towards the match later in the night. This is going to be a fairly short podcast because I'm going to say this a lot. Not much to say about this one, is there? Not really. Moving on. Charlotte Flair versus Bayley next. I picked Bayley to win. I didn't think they'd just give it to Flair straight off the bat. That doesn't make any sense at all. So Bayley gets to win now. Carries on with it down the line. Charlotte will be forced to work with Becky a bit more to try and get a title against the cheating of Bayley and Sasha. What we've already seen is Bayley trying to pull the same trick she pulled tonight for Sasha in a match on SmackDown, I think it was, against Flair, and Flair catching her. I think you're going to get a lot more of this. I was quite surprised to hear Chris say that Bayley is inching towards being a heel, because I think she's a fully blown heel at this point. But matters. But again, it was a very short match, so there's not a massive amount to say about it. That's one more for me, by the way, against Chris. I'll take that. Moving on to SmackDown, the Revival versus the New Day. I've got down here that I went for the New Day. I'm sure I said the New Day should lose and the Revival should win, but there you go. I don't know. I'm sure I mentioned New Day losing the titles to build tension towards Kofi Kingston. That's basically what this is. Again, another fairly boring match, and Chris talks about this is where Chris starts talking about the lack of depth in the tag team division. And in fact, there's not a lack of depth in the tag team division. They have many tag teams. He mentioned a few himself with the War Raiders, Machine, and AOP coming back. But you've got a few 205 live tag teams. So you've got is it Lucha House Party? That's three guys. You've got Bludgeon Brothers who have just reformed on SmackDown. Spoilers for later. You've got the Fashion Files guys, and that's just a small off the top of my head amount. They've got loads of tag teams. They just refuse to use them, and that's not counting again the Usos. So they've got loads of these guys. So they're just not using them, and they don't seem to think they have star power. And we know that Vince doesn't like tag team. So again, the Revival winning this makes sense to me. Going forward, it means that Kofi has two partners who don't have titles to distract themselves from the fact that he has a title, and everything so far has been very positive. And so I don't want them to split the New Day up, but what I want them to do is add that jeopardy in there. So maybe Big E's there going, well, I could be a world title champion, and Big E could be a world champion. So it makes sense. Maybe Big E and Kofi getting at each other. Maybe even give them a match. Big E and Kofi, members of a New Day, with Xavier Woods stuck in the middle trying to keep the peace. That would be really interesting, and that would be, for me, a good pay-per-view headliner. So if you're working towards that, the first step is take the titles off a New Day. The Revival will go on. The difference here is I don't expect Rude and Ziggler to hold on to Raw Tag Team titles for very long. I think the Revival will hold on to these for longer. Yes, you see why, but you do understand why Usos and New Day had so many tag team matches. It's because they were very, very, very good tag team matches. They had two teams that had great chemistry, and they were leading. The mistake they made was they didn't put enough tag teams in the mix to break it up, and they just had match, and they were doing it on pay-per-view and TV and everything. So it did get overkill, but they were all very enjoyable matches. And they've got a great roster. They've got a great tag roster, so use them, guys. Come on. Again, apparently I went for New Day and Chris went for Revival, so Chris gets that point. Women's tag team match. Rose and Deville versus Bliss and Cross. I agree with Chris. This was yawns and boring. And at least when the Iconics had the tag team title belts, Iconic! They are good and entertaining on the mic. And they came out and they could be that foil, that antagonistic team. And yes, in the ring they're not brilliant. They are legitimate wrestlers. Like they're not two models that they've called out. I think I say this every time we talk, but they are legitimate wrestlers. They were wrestling over in Australia before they came over to America. They are wrestlers. This isn't Tori Wilson or Candice Michelle or Eva Marie, who are just models that Vince likes. They are genuine wrestlers. So given that, and yes, Bliss, both Bliss and Cross are. I'm not sure about Bliss actually. Bliss might have just been because she was a cheerleader and a gymnast and all that side of it, so that's probably how she got in. Deville, MMA, Rose, I don't know. Pretty sure she was a fitness model. I'm pretty sure of that, so maybe that's how she got in. So what you're looking at in this match, I saw no reason to take the titles off Bliss and Cross. They are better than Rose and Deville. Alexa Bliss, and whether people like it or not, Bliss is one of the women that built this division. Her and Charlotte built the women's division. They did. They built up these two titles. And Nikki Cross is brilliant. I love Nikki Cross. So them holding the belts at least had that level of... Rose and Deville are just awful. It's odd, and I don't really know what they want to do with it. It seems to me like that they want to pull some form of lesbian angle with the two of them, but they haven't quite got the guts to do it. Because then that puts you into all sorts of issues. Because if you play it like you should with a lesbian couple, what you're going to do is you're going to upset the more conservative viewers. If you play it like they would have done in the past and make it a bit creepy and odd and not a correct portrayal of a lesbian couple, you're going to upset your gay viewers and more left socially orientated viewers. So I feel like there's this idea that is bouncing around of doing this, but they're too scared to pull the trigger, or they haven't quite decided how they want to do it, or whatever. So Rose and Deville just sort of exist in this sort of perpetual state of not really going anywhere. And yes, they've now given them the tag team titles, but the tag team titles doesn't really mean anything, not the women's version. It means nothing. There's been nothing done to build it up, and you think they had the perfect chance to do that with the first two champions, but now it's nothing. It's just being passed around again, and it's getting worse. It's going to end up in the scrap heap, and that's a real shame because it's something that could have really pushed them forward. It's also an issue that they've only got one women's tag team titles, but they haven't got a roster big enough to sustain another one. Maybe the cleverer option would have been to introduce two women's mid-card titles instead for to keep people busy and for women that you want to push and build up the card. That's just me. We're going to take a quick break, and again, Chris will be the first one you hear in a minute, so enjoy.
You're listening to Life Junkies podcast.
Okay, here we go. So, part 2. I'll start with the Intercontinental. Right, then we had the Intercontinental match. Shinsuke Nakamura against The Miz. Probably right decision, giving Nakamura the win. It was a decent game. Obviously, Nakamura's now got Sami Zayn in his corner. But Miz is going to be taking some time out, as I'm pretty sure he can't be far off having his second child. So to give him the title now would mean a probably very quick change again at the next pay-per-view. So maybe keep it on Nakamura with Sami Zayn doing his speaking, which was always Nakamura's weak point. Maybe Nakamura can go a bit further than he did last time he got a run. But yeah, it was decent. Obviously, Zayn kind of gets involved for the win, keeping the whole heel element for Nakamura. But he's looking decent, you know. And I don't know. I was trying to think who would be a good opponent. Where do you take this storyline next? I'd quite like to see a Samoa Joe v Nakamura match, only because that would probably... I mean, they have teased it a little bit, but tried to move Samoa Joe maybe more to a face than a heel, and that would probably cement that position if you got Sami Zayn and Nakamura out in the ring on SmackDown or Raw, running his mouth, Sami Zayn running his mouth, and Samoa Joe comes out, then the transition to face is probably almost there. Maybe something they could look at, and probably something I'd quite like to see. But yeah, it was decent. Not sure if we'll see the Miz again now for a while or not. We'll just have to wait and see. Then we had the Raw Women's title, which was a good match, probably better than good. And it kind of showed how an interesting backstory can really build a rivalry, and it kind of makes the match more appealing, builds anticipation levels a little bit, and I don't think it failed to deliver, to be honest. Both wrestlers performed very well. I'm not surprised at all it ended in a DQ, given Sasha's only just come back, and given they didn't want to drop the title off of Becky, so the only thing you can do is end it with a DQ. This will now go on to Hell in a Cell, which is fine, which is good. You've got another 4 weeks of building up again now. Keep them apart, a couple of run-ins here and there, and then when you get to Hell in a Cell, maybe, just maybe, we're ready now for a Becky Lynch title drop, which should be good, but we shall see. Following this, we had men's SmackDown title, Kofi Kingston against Randy Orton, and I've used the same word here, not for the match like I did for the women's tag team titles, but just because of the result and the words yawn. It's another win, another trouble in paradise when seemingly down and out. Kofi's matches are just so predictable now. I mean, Orton looked to have sewn it up, so I was a little disappointed in that. When he hit the RKO, I thought finally they're going to take it off him, but no, Kofi comes through again. That's probably the end of that rivalry as well. I mean, is that 2 pay-per-views there are matches on? So where does Randy go now without the title? He's not going to go Raw title. I very much doubt they're going to put him against AJ Styles, seeing as they're both heels, as is. Nakamura, again, is a heel, so would he go into Continental title? I don't think so. So I don't know. I don't know where Randy's going to go from it. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him.
Right, so that was Chris there. First off, again, as he said, was the Intercontinental title match. If what he says, and I haven't heard anything about this, but if what he says about is true about the Miz taking time off, and he's correct when he says that the second kid is very close now, so I presume he will, then no, keep it on Shinsuke Nakamura makes sense. I quite like what they're doing with Nakamura and Sami Zayn now. I don't know why they're keeping Sami Zayn out of the ring when he's brilliant in the ring, but sure, as a mouthpiece, he's great. And he's really, really good at being irritating. And that's what he's been doing since he's come back. And I'm still just not enjoying Nakamura in the ring. This match was all right. I wouldn't say it was a leading pay-per-view match. And it's just lacking something. It seems to me that they're going to keep it on Nakamura for a while, which is never a bad thing. You're still just waiting for that moment where he sparks and does something, but I don't think it's going to happen. I would prefer that at some point Zayn would turn on Nakamura and take the title off him. That, I think, would be the nice, logical next step. But for now, Miz loses, Nakamura wins. Raw Women's title next. Sasha Banks as Bayley. It was a DQ. I quite enjoyed this match. Had them fighting through the crowd and stuff like that. Again, DQ. It keeps Becky strong. Keeps Lynch strong. I do think they're going to end up taking the title off of Becky. I think we're getting about time now. The man push that she got first off from this, which was, it started all about a year ago. That's now run its course a little bit, which again is bad booking. This should have been massive, and it's not. They pretty much, it was on its way downhill by WrestleMania. It lost a fair amount of its luster, and it was bad booking decisions. They had the high of a start in that first attempted heel turn, and then when Becky got her face smashed open by Nia Jax, that's when it really exploded. And that was great. We had the visuals, and she played off that really well. And then you had some great, I can't remember. It was the great matches with Charlotte Flair were before this, wasn't it? It was the TLC match they had, which was really good. Then Royal Rumble, boom, and this is they're still along the lines, go where they should. And then between Rumble and WrestleMania, they just, it felt a little bit like they were trying to intentionally calm her down. It really did. And since then, I can quite happily listen to Becky Lynch, the man promos a lot. She's very good with her promos, and she will continue to be a top draw women's talent. But she was a game changer. The man gimmick when it first came was a game changer, and they haven't capitalised on that at all. And which is a real shame. And this is the thing: you can't have nice things. You can't. And why give her both belts to then lose one not soon after, and then the feud with what's her name, the Southern Belle or whatever she's called, her. That was, again, she's someone I'm quite a big fan of, even if I can't remember her name on the spot on a podcast. But she needed more maturing, and it was, we chuck her in because Vince thinks she's pretty. Well, that's great, but if you can't back up in the ring, you've got plenty of women that can. So it's been a bit of a. And the only good part of that feud was the last 10 seconds or 30 seconds of the final match, that tag match, in which Corbin took out Becky Lynch, and then Rollins went mental on Corbin. That is the only decent part of the entire feud, of both those feuds. That's the only good part, and that should have been that's the quality you should be hitting. And that wasn't a stunning bit. It looked stunning because of everything else that you had covered before that, but it wasn't. That should have been something incorporated into the feud in general. That shouldn't have been the payoff. It was a rubbish payoff. Next we have the one that really will upset Chris, and did upset Chris, the Kofi kicks and Randy Orton match. I think we're about the time when Kofi's going to look at losing the belt, maybe. I don't know. What I quite like is Chris has worked out Kofi's MO of Kofi is a smaller guy. He tends to get beaten up, and then he tends to hit a Trouble in Paradise to get the win. What Chris is forgetting, and this is the part of Chris gave me carte blanche to mock him on the podcast. You all heard him say that at the start. No. But he's backing Brock Lesnar, who is the most formulaic wrestler they have. In fact, the only times his matches ever get interesting or changed up is when he's against someone creative in themselves and who is big enough to tell him what to do. This is the man who had the most boring hardcore match of all time with Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose, who is someone that does hardcore matches. He really is. He does them really well, but Brock didn't want to listen. He didn't want to know. He didn't want to do it. He just wanted to do Brock, and he had such a long time. And this is what wouldn't have upset fans as much, him not showing up as much, if he hadn't come and just had such lazy, lackluster matches when he did. I still don't get people that are for his matches of Goldberg. The first one, yes, that was a moment because it came out of nowhere, we weren't expecting it. That's cool. That's fine. But the WrestleMania match was just pointless. Every Goldberg match nearly has been pointless. And to put him with Brock, who can't be bothered, it's just, if Brock was coming out and giving us great matches, interesting matches that every time, then yes, you go, okay, it's fine. But he wasn't. It was boom, bash, bosh, I'm gone. I get a little bit of offense on me, but now I'm going to Hulk up, and I am Brock Lesnar, and I'm going to take you out. There's nothing you can do about it. And that was every time. So I criticising Kofi for having a style of match that he pulls off where you support Brock Lesnar. I don't know. I'm happy that Kofi gets the win here and moves him on. I felt narratively Kofi had to win this match. You can put yourself into a corner. I know someone like Chris who's not a Kofi fan, but this feud was Kofi's redemption. If he loses it, then you're forever saying he is worse than Randy Orton. But you can't say that because Kingston is the next wave coming in. They need people like Kofi's age to take up the reins because Orton's not going to be around forever. And Kofi is late-ish 30s. I don't have my phone to hand, and I don't want to tap on my laptop because it'll come through. I think he's late 30-ish. So he's got those few years where I think Randy Orton's 40. Oh, we did this with the AJ Styles match, didn't we? Ages ago. But you can't, if you push him back down, and he's never getting back up from this in this particular feud. So, given this one maybe a couple of months or so, and then take the title off him, I don't think he'll make it to WrestleMania. I think he'll struggle to make it to Royal Rumble. Yeah.
So then we have on night called Clash of the Champions. We have a non-championship match, which is very WWE. This one was Eric Rowan against Roman Reigns. But it was good. I enjoyed it, and it's nice to see Roman Reigns get beaten at pay-per-view. I really enjoyed it. We had another cameo from the Cameron Jib, as we spoke about last week, to be used as a weapon. And we also got a surprise return with Luke Harper making a comeback, which it really surprised me, actually. I thought the one person we might have seen doing a run-in was Daniel Bryan. That didn't happen. But Luke Harper did. So now we have the Bludgeon Brothers back together. So that is really interesting to see what they're going to do with this. I always thought that Daniel Bryan was still behind this Eric Rowan manoeuvre, and obviously isn't. And where does that leave Daniel Bryan now? I'm kind of thinking they're going to turn him back into a face. I don't think the whole heel Bryant thing's been that good, to be honest. I think he's kind of lost his way, whereas when he had the Yes movement and he was a face, he was unbelievably popular. So maybe we'll see a Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan pack, maybe taking on the Bludgeon Brothers at Hell in a Cell. Or if not, maybe not. Maybe Daniel Bryan is still behind it all, and I'm sure we'll find out in the next few weeks. But I don't know. I've just got a feeling they're going to make him a face again. But we shall see. But no, this was a decent match, and it was nice to see Eric Rowan get the win. Then we had the final match of the night, the Universal Champion match. So the second match of the night for both Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins. Braun comes up short again. Never seems to get the rub of the green. So his size is decent on the mic. He's got decent crowd support, you'd think, when you see him on TV, but he never gets over the line. On this night, he's lost 2 titles on one pay-per-view tonight. Kicked out of 3 stomps, I think it was 3. So they gave him the battling loser coming up against all odds, but just falling short finish. It was a clean win as well for Seth, which is good to see. Both of them performed really well, both sold excellently. So no, it was a good match. And then obviously the best bit of the night was still to come. When Seth ended up on the stage to salute the crowd. What happens? Lights go out, and the Fiend appears and makes himself even more popular with the WWE Universe by attacking and standing over Seth Rollins in the darkness of the stage. It was a really well done piece, and now we'll get to see Bray in a cell at the next pay-per-view, which is going to be good. It's going to be good to see him in a proper match because he's obviously going to get a bit of a hiding at some point in that match. I'm interested to see how the mask holds up, to be honest, because it's going to be so hot for him in that mask, say in a 15-20 minute match under the lights. It's going to be incredible, so it's going to be interesting to see how he weathers it. Kind of personally think it's too early for both, to either A, give him the win and the title, or B, have him beat. Because if he gets beaten, where do you take that character? Or being beaten, off he goes, what, and just picks on the lesser people, or just goes around picking on legends? So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they're going to do with it. Unless they split it. The other thing I was thinking, the way they get out of that, I suppose, is if when they do the draft in a couple of weeks, they split them across brands. I don't think they'll do that. It's just going to be an interesting one. My hope for it, and they'll not do this, but if Bray was to beat Seth, which would be good, instead of taking the title at the end, he just leaves it in the ring and disappears. It's still there. And then he never takes the title. So WWE have to find a new champion. Whoever gets the title, the Fiend appears, beats them, leaves it again. So you get this storyline building that nobody wants the title, because if you get the title, it means the Fiend's coming for you. I think that might be quite a different story and quite a nice story for them to run with. I don't think they will, but it's just one of my thoughts and I'm putting it out there. But overall, it was a decent show. Unfortunately, predictable main events again, as in no title changes from the main titles. But hopefully we're angling towards a pay-per-view soon where we might actually see a couple of the main titles change hands. But we shall see.
So we came to the penultimate match of the night, which is the no DQ match with Roman Reigns and Eric Rowan. Now, I wasn't as upset as Chris was about them not putting a putting a non-title match on the card, mainly because I know this is WWE and I know this is what they do. When they had Night of Champions before, they used to have loads of non-title matches on that pay-per-view. They set rules and then they don't play again by them, which is what the wildcard rule is. So it was much of a muchness to me. I thought this was the best match of the night, which says a lot about the pay-per-view because it wasn't a brilliant match. Like, it was a good match, a good hard-hitting match, but it wasn't stunning, and it's not that match that you are going to walk away from the pay-per-view thinking about. So for that to be a best of match says just how by the numbers binary boring that the other matches were. The biggest part of the match was the end with Luke Gallows making his return, not Daniel Bryan as many people expected. I'm okay with this. For people that don't know about Luke Gallows' contract situation recently, he asked for his release quite a while ago now. Publicly on Twitter, he talked about it. WWE said no. It seemed like they just wanted to hold on for him as long as they could so he couldn't go to AEW. Luke Gallows he's quite respected by fans, but he's also really respected by other wrestlers. There was even a push for Luke Gallows t-shirts or something going around, I think propagated by Chris Jericho. So he's one of those guys, if he went to AEW, he'd do really well. WWE know this, so they tried to keep him in, and as they have done with Revival and a few other guys, they appear to be giving him a push. Personally, I think he looked great. He came back in great shape, looking at, and you know, when you look at someone, you're not just looking at you're not just looking at how they look, if that makes any sense at all. What you're looking at, there's a general sense around them. Your brain is also making calculations about what you know about them. So when you're looking at someone, you're not just looking at look that comes into it, but you're also looking at your knowledge of them. So for example, with a wrestler, you're looking at the win-loss record, you're looking at how they've been booked recently, you're looking at the character that is playing on screen. All this goes into, all your brain is calculating all of this when you look at someone. With wrestlers, I've always felt that you can look at them and you can sort of roughly estimate where you think they are in their career. If you look at him and go, he's mid-card. Look at him and go, he's a jobber. Look at him and go, he's main event. And that's not just, is he winning? Because where wrestlers are is a fluid state. You're always moving up and down the card. Or there's always someone moving up and down the card. There's a lot of people that tend to get into a place and stay there. But you've always got people moving up and down because there's only a finite amount of spaces in each section of a card. I looked at I looked at Luke Gallows last night and I thought he looks like he's ready for the main event. And it might just be me, it might not be. It might be that he was returning and I was going, ooh, this is interesting. I didn't expect this. But interestingly also, Eric Rowan was asked about the whereabouts of Luke Gallows and he gave a weird shady tweet of I don't know where he is. It was a really long sort of rambling old school Bray Wyatt-esque promo in which he referenced him being in the place of the pay-per-view last night, and it was just quite shady, and that got my mind thinking. Even then, I still didn't think he would. I thought, because what you tend to get is while people like Luke Gallows and while he's used so badly, they like to tease it, like with the push for Luke Gallows or Luke Gallows section or whatever t-shirts they had made up. So I was like, oh, it's probably just him having a little fun. And no, lo and behold, Luke Gallows shows up and gets in the win. So it'll be interesting to see whether going with this, word is that it was meant to be Daniel Bryan, and at the last minute they changed it to Luke Gallows, and that they're building towards a tag team match of Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns versus the Bludgeon Brothers. I don't think they'll stick with Daniel Bryan face turn. I think he will turn out to be. But if he turns out to be the leader, so to speak, then that means that Luke Gallows isn't getting the push he needs. So I don't know. I don't know, but I like the heel turn. So maybe if Bryan goes, mess this. I'm not anything to them, but also I don't want to help you, Roman, so I'm walking out mid Hell in a Cell match or whatever we're going to do. And then we come to the final match of the night, a Universal title match, which was, for me, straight out of a Brock Lesnar playbook. Braun Strowman was booked to look really strong. Seth Rollins still beat him, and it took, 3, maybe 4 of the curb stomps to put him down. And I get what the idea is. He's the battling loser. He is still strong. It took this many curb stomps to take him down. The problem with that booking for me is Seth Rollins was able to get that many curb stomps in him. That is perfect booking if you're booking a smaller guy that is just being outpowered in the match. Works completely. Braun Strowman is twice the size of Seth Rollins. There should have been more shenanigans to get him down, and it didn't work. So no, I don't think they've made him look strong. They made him look weak by taking that many curb stomps. Seth Rollins is champion. You don't really want them to hotshot the title like they would have been, and like they have to a certain extent for this year. But they've done Seth Rollins as champion. They had the chance, and they didn't get it right. The perfect time for Seth Rollins would have been turning face a few months before he got injured with his big heel run when he was the main guy in the Authority. They had it. They had the storyline built for him to have Triple H turn on him and turn him face, but they didn't pull it, and then he got injured, and then it was all over. And he's never quite caught that level of popularity since, and especially recently, in recent times, when he sort of turned into Teen WWE boy on Twitter. And he's lost. And Seth Rollins, he's a great wrestler. He really is. But he is the poster child for me for the problem with wrestlers in WWE today, where there is no personality to him. Zip. What is his gimmick? And I know we're talking about being in a reality era and more grounded in real characters, but there's you still got to have something about you. Braun Strowman is still the monster among men, and you know what that means. We've got The Fiend. The Fiend is getting over, and this is what you don't realise. The Fiend gets over. Broken Matt Hardy gets over. In fact, anything Matt Hardy gets over. There's still space for these guys with these big gimmicks and big personalities. Even with the more realistic portrayals, when you had Stone Cold Steve Austin and other guys you've had of a similar ilk, they turn themselves up to 11. Seth Rollins isn't. He's just a dude being a dude, and that's cool. Like the guy on YouTube that I follow to do the yoga that I do, I really like him because he is a dude, and he's just a dude that wants to do yoga, and that works for me doing yoga on YouTube. It doesn't work for a dude being a world champion in the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. I need more than just a dude that wants to wrestle, and that's all they've done. Even Cena, even when they stripped away the thugonomic side of him, he was still Cena turned up to 11. Maybe 10, but this is Seth Rollins at about 5 or 6, and it's just a bit boring. And this is one of a few things I agree with Chris on. I think they are really desperately missing the boat with Braun Strowman. We need him to win the title, and we need people to be scared of challenging for the title to the point where someone like Brock comes back to challenge him and then loses. And you need to get to that point with him where we're like, what do we do? Like, we can't. No one can beat him. He's on a rampage. To do that, they need to start him on a rampage again from the start. Take this as your day zero. This is it. We are reworking him from here. Start him again on squash matches with no-name guys, lower card guys. Start building him back up. Then give him the title run. Please, WWE, give him a title run. Like, I get it. He's an attraction. Yes, but The Undertaker was an attraction. He still had the title a year after debuting because he needed that. Before you can properly be an attraction, you need the title to prove that you are worth it. You still need to build yourself up. That's the mistake they made with Bray Wyatt the first time round. They by the time they gave him a title, it was too little, too late, and then they took it back off him straight away again. You need to give Braun the legitimacy. He gave himself a legitimacy to start, but all he gets to be known now is the guy that just can't quite do it. And Chris said it himself. He just can't get the rub of a green in his matches. He's the nearly guy. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And you need to push him more than that if you want to make him a star. And he is star material. He's exactly what I say when he's dialed up to 11. He is Braun Strowman in this big... And I followed the dude on Instagram. He's very similar to the Braun, but bigger for the wrestling. And that's what he needs to be. And that's what... Why isn't he... I don't get it. Why isn't he champion? Please. They needed to put the belt on him even before his WrestleMania match with where he won the tag titles with a little kid. Honestly, he needed that, and they've let him down. And this is the thing: he's a big, strong guy. He's 6'9" or whatever. He's huge. He's just the kind of bloke that Vince. In fact, he's such a Vince McMahon guy that Vince pulled him off with, what was it, 3 months he spent in the Performance Centre before he called him up. The fans were outraged. Do you remember that? The fans were outraged. This guy's rubbish. And he was naff when he first came up. And he learned very quickly. And he won the fans over because he is good on the mic. Because they used, and I don't know whether it's the bookers or him or some sort of combination, probably that, but he was used well so that his limitations didn't shine through. They used his positives, accentuated them, and limited his limitations, which is what I say on this podcast regularly. And he won the fans over, and then for some reason they didn't. And I don't know where they switched roughly the same time as the fans switched or what happened, but they haven't. I think that this is Bray Wyatt syndrome again. They think they can get by without giving him the title, and they've got other guys that they want to prioritise for the title. But it's not going to work, and you're just going to lose him. The fans are still just about on board with him. You need to give him the title. With that being my rant over, I'm going to give the last words on the pay-per-view to Chris, and then I will come back and do my outro links.
Just a few side notes was obviously we had no King of the Ring on the card. It was being moved to Raw, so I'm guessing it's obviously not had the impact that they had hoped. The glorious return of the King of the Ring tournament. I mean, they used wrestlers for one who fans weren't invested in, like Chad Gable and Benjamin and Ali. You're just not building any storylines there. There's nothing for anybody to get the teeth into, so it's predictably kind of died on its ass, to be honest. We've got King Baron now. He beat Chad Gable this week to become the king. It was alright. I mean, the End of Days is a lovely finisher. Really good. I mean, nobody's ever kicked out that finisher. It is a great move, but I don't know where's he go from here, because there's no room at a title picture. So is he just gonna have a few months of just beating jobbers? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. We had a bizarre thing on Raw this week: the gender reveal party for Kanellis. I mean, WTF? I mean, a Ricochet. We had the return of Rusev, bizarrely. Supposedly now the father of the baby, with his hair chopped off and a great Robert Roode moustache. I kind of think they've just brought him back because they've got the draft coming up, putting as much talent on TV so they get picked and moved across to whatever brand they need to be. Speaking of the draft, obviously what's going to happen? So next week, is it? Yeah, next Friday. I think the next SmackDown is day one of the draft, and it's going to be brand exclusivity, which I didn't think it would be. So if you get drafted to Fox and SmackDown, that's it. You are gone from Raw. So it's going to be a strange one to see who goes where. We did have, obviously, it looks now like Kofi's going to be on SmackDown, given the fact that this week Brock Lesnar, of all people, came out and challenged him to a world title match on the opening Friday premiere on Fox Sport. So does that mean Brock's going to be on SmackDown, or is Brock just a free agent anyway and he's going to disappear again? I was great to see Brock come out. I thought that's fantastic. I thought Hell in the Cell. But when he said the match is going to be on SmackDown, Kofi's going to win. They're not going to open it up and have Kofi, the People's Champion, apparently, lose his title on day one. And Lesnar's name was just been in there to bump the ratings for that first day. So a little bit sad by that, because they're just kind of making Brock a jobber. Losing to decent middleweights is what I would call Kofi, to be honest. So yeah, I'm not I am pretty disappointed at that. If you're going to bring Brock back so quickly after the loss to Rollins, don't bring him back and have him beat by Kofi, because you're lessening his impact every single time you use him. You should have saved him and brought him back later on to take the title. The only way you're bringing him back, I mean, don't get me wrong, if he's coming back to be a regular appearance on SmackDown, then give him the title. Fantastic, that'd be great, but it's not going to happen. So a little bit disappointing. But yeah, there was a few notes I made, obviously on Raw and SmackDown this week. We saw the Bludgeon Brothers again on SmackDown. Like I said before, that story's rumbling on now, and maybe we are going to see that Daniel Bryan face turn. But who knows? Thanks a lot, mate. I'm sure you've mocked me considerably throughout this podcast for my predictions. But yeah, cheers, mate. Speak to you soon.
Right, some decent notes from Chris there, probably better than I could have talked about Raw or SmackDown. I do agree that the whole gender reveal thing for Maria Kanellis is odd, and leading to sort of Rusev being the father, who apparently they're going to do another reveal later on down the line where Rusev isn't the father or whatever. The whole weird cuckold Kanellis story is just odd. For me, I don't really know what the plan is or what they're trying to achieve with it. It makes him look bad. I think it makes anyone associated with it look bad, but there you go. Sure. Obviously, someone in the back finds it funny. It's probably popping the boys. So there you go. That's what you get, Mike. How dare you work for TNA and be reasonably successful there, and then come over to WWE and have a drug problem? How dare you? That'll show him. Right, cool. Social media links. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Brazier25. Easy. You can find Life Junkies on Twitter, _Life Junkies, and also on Facebook, The Life Junkies 25. You can read any works, find back episodes of the podcast, videos, whatever else we do. It'll all be correlated at thelifejunkies25.wordpress.com. And you can find back episodes of this podcast on YouTube. You will not find it on your podcast provider because I don't pay for it to do it. Sorry guys, I am a single parent who's also a student, so there's no money coming out of my pockets because there's no money to give. I might add some YouTube stuff if you're watching this on YouTube. I've forgotten to do it for the last few videos. I need to at some point sit down and sort that side of my life out. If you've listened on a podcast provider, I hope you've enjoyed it. Find more on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, the general things I have to ask you, and there'll be things on the screen about nowish. They've probably been out for a little while. Click on them and watch more of the stuff. Thanks for listening, guys, and I will catch you next time.